named Salafsar, began to gain influence in Cambodia's communist movement. They formed what would later become the Khmer Rouge, taking inspiration from Maoist China and advocating for an agrarian revolution. When Sihanouk was overthrown in 1970 by a U.S.-backed coup, Cambodia descended into civil war, and the Khmer Rouge seized the opportunity to expand its control. By 1975, after years of fighting, the Khmer Rouge captured Phnom Penh and took over the country. The ideology behind the regime. The Khmer Rouge's ideology was extreme and centered around the concept of Year Zero, which signified a complete reset of Cambodian society. The regime aimed to create a classless, self-sufficient, and purely agrarian society by eliminating all traces of modernity, urban life, and foreign influence. They believed that Cambodia's future lay in its rural, peasant population, which they saw as the true embodiment of the revolution. Intellectuals, city dwellers, and those with Western ties were deemed corrupt and counter-revolutionary. The Khmer Rouge rejected education, religion, markets, and any form of international cooperation, seeing these as remnants of imperialism and capitalism. Their vision was of a society where everyone worked the land, lived communally, and obeyed the state without question. It was an ideology that led directly to the mass atrocities for which the regime is infamous. The evacuation of cities and forced labor camps. One of the first and most shocking acts of the Khmer Rouge was the evacuation of Phnom Penh and other cities, where millions of people were forced to leave their homes and march into the countryside. The regime ordered these evacuations under the pretext that U.S. forces were planning to bomb the cities, though no such attack was imminent. Within days, the capital, once bustling with over 2 million residents, was emptied. The evacuees, including the elderly, the sick, and children, were forced to walk long distances under brutal conditions to rural labor camps, often without adequate food, water, or medical care. Thousands died along the way from exhaustion, starvation, or disease. Upon reaching their destinations, these former city dwellers were made to work in collective farms, often under the constant threat of violence. The labor was grueling, the working conditions harsh, and food was scarce. The regime sought to meet unrealistic agricultural production quotas, leading to widespread famine and death from overwork. Those who failed to meet their work targets or showed signs of resistance were often executed, targeting intellectuals and enemies of the revolution. The Khmer Rouge's radical anti-intellectualism was one of the most defining aspects of its regime. Pol Pot and his followers viewed intellectuals, professionals, and anyone with formal education as threats to their vision of a pure agrarian society. This led to the systematic targeting and execution of teachers, doctors, engineers, lawyers, and even people who wore glasses, as they were considered educated elites. The infamous S-21 prison, located in Phnom Penh, became a symbol of the regime's brutal purges. Originally a high school, S-21 was converted into a detention and torture center where thousands of suspected enemies of the state were imprisoned, tortured, and executed. Prisoners were forced to confess to fabricated crimes, often implicating friends and family members. Out of the 17,000 people who were sent to S-21, only a handful survived. The killing fields, mass executions, and death. Perhaps the most infamous legacy of the Khmer Rouge regime is the killing fields, a term used to describe the mass grave sites scattered across Cambodia where thousands were executed and buried. Those considered enemies of the regime, including intellectuals, ethnic minorities, religious leaders, and even Khmer Rouge members who fell out of favor, were taken to these sites to be brutally killed. Executions were carried out with extreme cruelty. To save ammunition, the Khmer Rouge often used blunt instruments such as hammers, axes, and wooden sticks to bludgeon their victims to death. In many cases, entire families were murdered to prevent any possibility of future revenge. The mass graves at the killing fields stand as chilling reminders of the horrific scale of the genocide, famine, and starvation. In addition to the direct violence of executions, millions of Cambodians died as a result of starvation and disease during the Khmer Rouge's rule. The regime's radical agricultural policies, which included forced collectivization and the abolition of private ownership, led to severe food shortages. Farmers were forced to grow rice and other crops under inhumane conditions, while the regime exported much of the food to obtain arms and political support from China. Thank you for watching the whole video. If you find it interesting, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel.